one. So picture this. You are on vacation. After working really hard for the last year, you finally got 7 days away with your family. And your phone rings. You pick up the phone, and on the other end of that phone is one of your team members telling you that a closing that is supposed to happen in about a week on a, call it $4 million file, is all of a sudden not going to happen. And you're with your family. All of a sudden, all the emotions start rising. Wait a second. This deal was firm. What do you mean it's not going to close? And he tells you that all of a sudden the bank had pulled financing on the buyer, who's represented by another agent, and it's just not going to happen. How would you react? Would you completely scrap your vacation? Would your emotions take over? Would all of a sudden you feel like your vacation's ruined? Or would you be in a position to actually solve the solution, have a runway in front of you, not feel overwhelmed, and still be able to connect with your family while you're away? So this story actually happened to us in a very volatile market, with interest rates changing in Canada and commercial real estate really shifting in the marketplace. When I got that phone call when I was away on vacation, this is a file that I worked on for years. I had worked very closely with this client to build a portfolio of properties. We had helped them with a recent transition. We had sold it to a purchaser. And when I got the phone call, my reaction was very simple. Zero emotion. I simply responded to my team member, no, that's not happening. And pragmatically stepped back, watch my emotions drift down a river so that I could figure out a solution and a path forward for my client. Now, early on in my career, had something like this happen to me, I probably would have had a vacation that got ruined in an instant because, oh my gosh, such a huge file is blowing up in my face. What's the client going to think about me? What's the public going to think about me if it comes back on market? Oh my gosh, commercial real estate's crashing, or real estate's crashing with interest rates. That would have been my reaction probably 10 years ago because I didn't have the skill set that I have today. So in today's training, I'm going to share the outcome of that story. I'm going to share a few other stories that may make you feel the same way about content creation, building teams, and how overwhelm can come into those situations and how I dealt with it. And I'm going to give you a couple tools that I use on a daily basis to deal with overwhelm at a high level basis. The reason I'm doing this video is actually an audience member just like you had sent me a request. They said, Justin, we see you on social. We know you run the real estate company, the production company. You do residential, commercial investing in Southwestern Ontario. You do thought leadership, speaking, content creation. How on earth do you do it all? I was at a team member's house yesterday, picking up an item, and her husband was actually saying to me, like, I just don't get it. How could you possibly do it? And I tell him, I'm actually less busy than probably you are and most other people because I've created a system, right? I'll share some of my tools in this episode around what that system's like, and you can implement it in your life. It did not happen overnight, and it is not something that is even perfect today. It's something that I'm working on consistently, but there's a couple secrets that I'll share with you on how I can manage to do so many things, yet still have time to go to the beach, to go fly fishing, to go paddle boarding, to go travel, and live my life to its fullest because I'm thoughtful about stepping back from the overwhelm. So jump in the comments if you've ever felt overwhelmed in your business. I will do a Q&A session. So I'll go back to the comments for the last 5 minutes of this video and I'll address any questions. Fun fact, we are also live on Clubhouse. Yes, Clubhouse is still a thing. We're in Breakfast with Champions every Friday morning. So I'll do a Q&A session there and leave it open for discussion. So a few ways to interact with me. I don't offer any coaching. I don't sell anything. So the only way you can thank me or support this channel is to like it, subscribe, and share it with somebody that you think may get value. At the very end of this episode, I'll also give you access to a couple PDFs that I use in the tools that I was just talking about. Now let's go back to the $4 million file. So how did I deal with it? Well, most average agents put their head in the sand and say, well, the deal's not going to close. They're not going to fund the deal. What I did with my team member was say, okay, let's reverse engineer the deal. What type of funding do they need? Who is in the building? What type of asset is it? It's a commercial real estate asset. I specialize in commercial, always have. It's been a big part of my business. And we started talking to the lenders. Who has the funding on the file currently? Who's the tenants? What are the dynamics of this? What is the vendor able to do in terms of financing? And we ended up spending time going back and forth with all of the different parties and came up with a solid solution. And we also realized, yes, work from office isn't what it was previously, but too many of the lenders that were looking at the file objectively were just reading headlines when we looked at the asset class, we looked at the millions of dollars in investment happening in the area. All of a sudden, the confidence in the person purchasing the building and the lenders lending on the building skyrocketed, and we came up with a creative solution. Also, because we're really good at our jobs, and this is why our clients hire us, they don't hire us for the easy files, they hire us for the hard ones. We were able to have a very firm discussion with the parties on the other side of the transaction and talk to the agent and work with them and look at it objectively and say, hey, understand that if this doesn't close, it's not like we're just keeping the deposit. I think a lot of real estate agents, when a deal's just not going to close, I don't care if it's residential investment or commercial, turn around and go, I just lose my deposit. I'm like, no, you lose the deposit, you get sued for the difference of the price potentially of if that property sells for $1 million less, you're getting the deposit, you're getting sued for $1 million, and any damages associated with carrying it in between, and any decisions that were made based on your firm contract. So like this isn't just you lose a couple $100,000 deposit. This is like an earth-shattering change to your portfolio. So being able to have the skill set and look at the objectiveness of that situation was how I was able to remove the emotions from it. Yes, when I was away with my family and I got that phone call, there was an initial sense of overwhelm. But I've been through this so many times in my career. I've sat on professional standards committees for years. I put myself in the fire that building that resilience enables me to deal with the issue. One super hack that I think enables me to do that is doing jujitsu. So I actually have a book here behind me. I'd recommend anybody read this. This is like the GOAT in jujitsu, Rickson Gracie, unequivocally like the guy. Even at like peak competitiveness, there's usually like 2 or 3 people. This guy was like levels beyond everybody else. And the immersion into something that was difficult on a daily basis made everything else in his life so much easier to deal with. So one tip I'm going to give you is do something hard. Work out really hard. Grab a paddleboard. Go for a hike. Do something that scares you or is maybe taxing on your system on a daily basis and get rid of that energy. It is so critical for human beings to deal with resilience. Think of kids, right? Typically, kids that are acting out are usually pushing, expecting for somebody to push back. And if they don't get that, they're going to output the energy in a way that is just too much for a lot of people. But did they do anything challenging during that day? Because we all know that if you actually take your kids outside and play with them, put them in sports, put them in jujitsu, let them use an musical instrument, have them work out with you, all of a sudden their entire energy changes. And it's the same thing when it comes to business, right? If you're not doing something to build resilience from a mental perspective, from a physical perspective every single day, you're going to constantly feel overwhelmed. I'm going to get into some of my structure later in this video. So hopefully you can start building that structure for yourself as well. Second case study. So picture this. You're watching all of the social medias knowing I got to do Reels. I got to do TikTok. I want to do YouTube. I want to shoot photos for Instagram. Now I got to do Threads. Have you ever felt overwhelmed when it comes to content creation? I sure did when I was early on in my career. And here's my solution. Very simple. Is I pick one day a week and I take 30 minutes and all I do is I plan my ideas. Now my idea bank is actually Threads and Twitter. So anytime I get an idea, I put it on Threads, I put it on Twitter, and super hack, I actually use those apps to see which ones get the most engagement. And then those are the ones I shoot video on. So done. All my ideas for the entire week are now sorted and I don't even have to think about it. And I definitely don't feel overwhelmed that I have to sit down and I got to come up with a list of ideas and shoot it and then actually output it. I would say most people, when it comes to content creation, the reason they actually get overwhelmed is they think they need to do it all in one day. That is the biggest mistake anybody could possibly make. So there you go. Another little tip for you. What I can tell you is after you have your idea planning day, then you have your shooting day. I do it on Thursdays. So yesterday was our media day. Typically I'm doing any batch content. So if I'm shooting reels or if I'm shooting market update videos or whatnot, I try and do it always on Thursdays. The reason that I think having a set shooting day is important is your body and your mind will start falling into the cadence of like, no, this is just what I do on Thursdays. The people in your world, like my wife knows, I do the Prime People podcast every Thursday, 1 to 2 p.m. Yes, I go on vacation, so I'll pre-shoot some episodes and then publish those, but we don't really have to communicate about it or think about it. It's not like every single day I'm having to explain when the podcast is. It's Thursdays, 1 to 2 p.m. I shoot my content this time to this time. My team knows I'm in my huddles and my red zone meetings this time to this time. Having a rigid schedule scares some people. I would argue it actually creates quite a bit of freedom. If you have discipline, you end up not feeling overwhelmed. If you don't have discipline and you don't have structure, you end up feeling really overwhelmed because you wake up and you're like, I got all these things to do. And all of a sudden, I don't know how I'm going to get them done. And I just feel overwhelmed and you're just falling forward. Jump in the comments if you've ever felt like you're falling forward. But I think that's absolutely key. And then once you've separated the idea days and you've separated the shooting days, if you're a solopreneur and you don't have a team, I'd say separate your distribution days so you can actually plan and schedule content on a weekly basis. Take an hour, 30 minutes for ideas. I'd say an hour for shooting content and maybe an hour for distributing your ideas. And you can use apps like later.com. You can use scheduling apps. I would recommend push natively to whatever platforms you're working on. I'm going down a bit of a wormhole here with content creation, but personally, I've seen a big difference by me actually posting on TikTok or actually posting on Instagram versus just using scheduling apps. But discussing social media platforms is a discussion for another day. If you want me to do a full video on my thoughts of all of the social media platforms and how I show up on each one, let me know. It may actually simplify your life a lot, realizing that you should really only be focusing on one or two and then using the other ones in a just different strategy. But let me know in the comments if you want me to do that video. I see Abundant Health Services. Yep, you felt overwhelmed. So have I. Roger Horvath, the Flying Realtor. I tell my kids the world doesn't get easier. We must get stronger. That Roger's probably one of my favorite quotes. And nice to see you, Abundant Health. I see you, Dora Marie. Dream Pran Start Go. Nice to see you. A whole bunch of you are here. If you're in the comments or you're watching the video, let me know. If you're on Clubhouse, click the link at the top and join us. I'll give you a shout out. Would love to see your name pop up. Third case study that I thought I would share is team building. So I have a lot of experience with team building. We have a team of about 28 right now that are split between the real estate company, the production company, and the way the real estate company is structured is we have our internal leadership team. God's in charge of our brokerage, so he's at the core of our universe. Then it's Shannon, my wife, and I. My wife's genius, MBA from the Richard Ivey School of Business, operations, transaction coordination. She truly is the brains of the organization. I'm the face. That's why you see me online. So I am marketing and sales. Then we have our leadership team. Underneath our leadership team, we have our integrators, which are people that support the leadership team. Then we have our Navy SEAL teams. So if you're looking for a real estate agent anywhere in the world, you call us first because we have the best network on the face of the earth. I sent a great referral to Ryan Serhant actually this week. Came off the Prime People podcast in Miami. So if anybody's looking to do business with Ryan in Miami, let me know. I could hook you up with him directly. But we've done referrals in like Texas, UK, BC, Montreal, LA, Colorado. Like we probably send 35 referrals a month. Just literally DM me and I'll connect you with those people. But let's talk Southwestern Ontario. Talking team building, folks. This is my team. We do residential, commercial, investments, agriculture, new developments, and recreational properties. Oh my gosh, Justin, that's so many asset classes. How do you not feel overwhelmed? Well, I have Navy SEAL teams to deal with every one of those. I have my snipers. I have my medics. I have my tech guys. So I have a leader of each one of those divisions. At the top of that is the company and the system. People pay for our real estate market intelligence, the amplification and the marketing that we do, our negotiation skills, and the fact that we're actually ethical real estate agents and you can't buy us. So when I have leaders of those divisions, all of a sudden they have decentralized command. They've spent years in the trenches with me. They know how I think. We communicate in group chats with all of our clients. So that's all organized. Underneath them are people that specialize in each one of those aspects in real estate, depending on the territory. We're located in Southwestern Ontario, and we cover markets like London, Grand Bend, Port Stanley, St. Thomas, Kitchener, Woodstock, Sarnia, and then all of the submarkets. So from a team building perspective, how do I feel less overwhelmed? I have an organizational structure in place and I can explain it to you without looking at a sheet because I have an organizational structure in place. Like I said about time blocking, if you spend a little bit of time being disciplined, then you have the freedom to act based on that discipline, and the structure that you've created is probably one of the most key factors. Now, one of the less shiny stories or happy stories is the amount of time it took me to get to what that core team looks like, because back in 2015, we had explosive growth. I almost signed a lease for a 4,000 square foot office because I just thought, well, I got to become a real estate brokerage because that's what real estate people do, right? They get their licenses. Maybe they start a team. They start achieving success. A lot of them just work for a national, but we opened up our own firm. So we own our company outright. So it's like, well, now I got to recruit agents because that's what they do. And I remember December 2015, about to sign the lease, and had a heart to heart with my wife. And we're like, what do we want to be? And just taking a second to step back amidst that overwhelming feeling of like, no, this is what we have to do. We sign the lease, we get 60 agents, then we get 200, then we open up offices all over Canada. And like, that's not what we do. Like, we're not a brokerage. You can't just call Prime and say, hey, I just got my real estate license. I'm interviewing brokerages. What are you going to give me? Like, we don't operate like that. We have a waiting list of agents. We only hire once or twice a year, if that, because we're a company that specializes in real estate. We don't make our money on agent count and office count. We're the best real estate agents on the planet. That's our goal. We're the most trusted real estate brokerage on the planet. That's our goal. So just hiring a million people that aren't going to adhere to our standards is not going to track to what we're trying to accomplish. The reason I'm sharing this story is during that time from call it 2015 to 2020, I was saying yes to people that didn't necessarily understand that personal branding mattered, that, you know, the goals that we have as a brokerage are to have the most driven, creative, ethical growth mindset people that you could possibly imagine at our firm. And we hired people that didn't adhere to those core values. Like, if you're not in a place in your career where you want to grow with us, where really putting the client before the money matters, that understanding that personal branding matters is a core principle of what we're investing in, then we aren't in alignment, right? And it wasn't a negative thing. It wasn't an overwhelming thing when some of those relationships ended and we parted ways. Some left on amazing terms. We're still friends to these days. Some, especially on the ethical side of things, didn't, and that's okay too. It became a net positive and not overwhelming, and never took up any space in my head because I knew what the plan was at the end of the day. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, is they get caught up in the outcome. Ultimately, I shared a little insight into how we feel less overwhelmed, and that God being at the center of our business is the ultimate, because I'm so not attached to the outcome of anything, because that is my core why. But I can tell you, when I deal with individual situations, especially if I'm talking to real estate agents or entrepreneurs, usually when they come to me with problems and I give them context of some of the issues that I've dealt with, all of a sudden their problem doesn't seem like that big of a deal, right? That the dad showed up to the inspection and squashed the deal after, you know, they knew this was the right house for the person. They put 25 hours into the deal, and oh my gosh, that this is happening. You know, giving them that perspective of the relationships and sometimes how those relationships end up. There's one file that I did where I remember a site supervisor disrespected one of my female staffs, drove to Toronto, released that file, did not want to work with a company that would put somebody like that in place, not in alignment with our core values and the ethics of where we were going. And we ended that relationship, and I got a relationship that was 10 times bigger because of the fact that now I was not aligned with that person. The second developer would not have called me because I was in alignment with that first one, right? So sometimes, and again, God being at the core of our business, I always think about this, he will close some doors to open up others. And that can be through relationships, that can be through work. So anytime you feel overwhelmed, whether it's business, whether it's content creation, whether it's tough situations with team members or anything else, understand that sometimes those doors are getting closed to prepare you for some of the best ones ever. If there's any comments or questions, drop them in the chats right now. I'm going to do about 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to go over to the private audio only segment. I'm going to give you guys a couple tools that I told you actually do help me quite a bit. Let me just share my screen here real quick. Here's my entire screen. The best way to get these resources are go to justinkonikow.com/resources. I'm going to drop them in the chat really quick on Clubhouse and both on YouTube. This is a website that I created because a lot of times I would be doing my segments and sending out these PDFs to people through Instagram, and it became overwhelming. So I built a system. Time blocking is probably the most powerful for you. 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night. It's like brushing your teeth. Dump everything in your head on paper. What's urgent? What do you have to do this week? What do you got to just do someday? I would also say do something that's like 60 to 90 day and only pick 2 or 3 major rocks. We just launched a new website. We got a new answering service. We're working on some AI integrations at Prime. Those are our rocks, right? Then I would say at the end of the week, take 30 minutes on a Saturday and then just do a week sweep. And then look at your calendar, right? When you go through this document, it'll explain a lot about once you actually organize everything, put it on your calendar at the end of the week, treat your calendar like Tetris, and you can move stuff around. Some stuff you did, some stuff you didn't do, some stuff matters, some stuff doesn't. It really helps you organize your life at an ultra high level, and it digs into how you can use digital brains and some apps and tools to really help you do that at a high level. Time blocking and mind sweeping, I think, is one of the most critical things in terms of not feeling overwhelmed. And then I talked about content creation. This content creation guide has links for some videos that I did on exactly how I come up with my ideas, exactly how I shoot them and execute them. And then my time blocking daily planner sheet. This is the one that I'm actually using right now. These can be really, really helpful for you to dig in and start unlocking those keys to overwhelm in the different places that you spend. I got one question. How do you know when to fire a client? That's a pretty in-depth question. Depends on the client and situation. Ultimately, I think my gut will tell me exactly when I need to fire a client, and I'll do it really fast nowadays. Early on, a lot of times I would make excuses for my clients. I think we can all make excuses for other people, but I think the second I've done it very, very quickly is when there's something major that happens that doesn't adhere to our core values. So whether it's a client, whether it's a team member, whether it's just a relationship, I think it's when something is happening that is going to affect the long-term growth of my family, myself, my business in a negative way. That's when I know that it's time to let that relationship go. Because if I don't, we all know that if you get one bad apple in a bunch, it can ruin pretty much the rest. I find that that's where that initial action takes place. I think having people that you can really lean on to have these discussions with is key. My wife is obviously my business partner, so we've had that discussion. We've had many difficult discussions that at the time seemed like the biggest deal at the end and now feel like nothing. That gut reaction, we go into prayer and we really think about it before we execute it. But I would say the best piece of advice I can give is don't wait, just take action. I can think of 3 situations in real estate where I didn't even hesitate to fire a client because the action that client took was so not in line with the ethics and how we wanted to operate or be seen in the industry. So hopefully that answers your question. One more tool I was going to give you actually is, not sure if any of you have heard of this. I mentioned it in the episode, the Prime People podcast. This is another tool for you that if you just want to listen to audio versions of the podcast that I do on YouTube, a lot of these stories, I remember I interviewed Glenda Baker and she talked about how she came from literally nothing to becoming one of the biggest TikTok real estate celebrities on the planet. Jazz Takar, same story. Alfonso Quadra, I did one with him. He literally lost it all and started from scratch. You will notice the same stories I told today, every single one of these people experienced themselves. Even Ryan Serhant was on the Prime People podcast and talked about how he was on the subway, didn't have enough money to buy noodles, and had literally hit rock bottom. And I think that's where I'm going to land my plane on the actual video portion of this is anytime you experience overwhelm or resilience, understand that failure and hard things don't define you. They actually refine you. Every single time something I thought or perceived as negative in my business happened, I grew exponentially because I think one of my superpower is never to look at something as a difficult situation. Jocko Willink behind me on my wall of champions talks about this all the time. Like he was a Navy SEAL team leader. They didn't get the right equipment. Great. Fantastic opportunity for us to figure out how to get better with what we have. Didn't get that promotion. No problem. I got more time to work on my skill set. I think if you can detach yourself from the outcome and realize the outcome doesn't define who you are, all of a sudden nothing feels overwhelming. You're in growth mode. And I think if you can live your life in growth mode versus goals mode, you're never going to lose because just like jujitsu, life never has an endpoint. You never become a 5-stripe coral black belt. Then all of a sudden you're like, I got it. I'm the guy. You become the guy or the girl by constant improvement. So I appreciate you all so much for being here. Share this video and subscribe. Hopefully you get some value from it. And I keep doing the live streams. If you don't, let me know in the comments. I'll shoot locked off videos. I'm good with that as well. give me topics. This entire segment happened because of one of you reaching out to me. So reach out to me on Instagram. You can hook up with me on Threads as well. I'll actually drop the link to my Threads in the comments. I'm super active on that platform. So if you actually want to chat with me, I am there all the time. Going to go back over to Clubhouse for a couple minutes, but I'll catch you guys on the next one. And I hope you have a wonderful and productive weekend. Make sure to let the equipment rest. Do something that scares you every day. Let